Planning Committee of the 15th of May 2024. Apologies for absence. Have we received any apologies?
Councillor Frost sends apologies, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Any more?
Councillor Russell, she's an apology.
Councillor Russell? Yeah. Okay, thank you. Any declarations of interest on tonight's agenda? No? Okay, thank you. Minutes of the last meeting held on the 3rd of April, they're to follow, so we'll have a look at those next month. Chair's announcements, just a couple of announcements to start with. Is Mr. Gandhi in the audience tonight? No. Okay. What I'm going to do then, I'm going to take item 5A and put that towards the end of the agenda because he's broken down and he's going to be late. So I'll refer that to the end. And then you are quite welcome to record the meeting. Please don't interrupt any of the speakers. We have 9 speakers registered to speak tonight. Ed's checked you in, so if you were expecting to speak tonight and Ed hasn't checked you in, please let me know now. Good, okay. Please don't interrupt speakers as they're speaking and don't interrupt the committee while they're discussing the application. If there is a fire alarm that goes off, please make your way out the building, out of the steps, down the front door, and we'll meet on the corner of the Guildhall Road. Okay. Also, items 5G and 5C, or 5C and 5G, have been removed from tonight's agenda and they'll be heard at a later meeting. Okay then, so items for determination. We will go to 5B first, which is the Elfnors Barn in Preston Capes Road, Church Stowe. And this is being presented by Tim. Tim. Sorry you didn't have a bit of a rest before coming straight into it.
Is this where I go, just there?
Yes, please, yes.
Welcome everybody. Before I start, I do need to point out on the report that there's a kind of typo where I summarised the local highway authority's response. I said they didn't object and that they requested a speed survey and improvements to access and parking arrangements. And then it says, satisfied with survey results and improvements made. That should have said improvements made to the drawings.
Ah, right.
Because it gives the impression that the works have actually been done, whereas they've not been done. So it's improvements to the drawings, not the actual works. Just waiting for the monitor to warm up here. So bear with us. Alright, okay. I'll start because obviously you can see this one. Okay, so 2023-790, it's for change of use of land to mixed use, agriculture, leisure and tourism, including retention of a temporary mobile home. So therefore it's part retrospective because the temporary mobile home is already in situ. Just a brief thing about the location plan. The location plan, it is a proposed location plan if you like, so the access and parking arrangements are actually already drawn in, even though they're not there in real life. The red line is to the top half of the field, and there's a blue line to the bottom, which the applicant always has an interest in. There is a public right-of-way that runs diagonally across the field to the right, which is here. And just to give you an indication of whereabouts we are in the world, Church Stowe is about 1 kilometre in that direction, Upper Stowe is about 1 kilometre in this direction, and Everton is about 2 kilometres to the west. So we're to the south of Daventry Town, roughly. I'll just also point out the little rectangles by Preston Capes Road represent the proposed location for the glamping pods. They're not in situ. When you see the photos, you'll see that nothing's happened as yet, apart from the fact that there is a caravan there. The block plan pretty much shows the same as what's on the location plan, except it's to a larger scale, so I won't dwell on that. And then there's another plan of the actual access and parking arrangements, which are proposed and have been done. And the parking arrangements that have been shown by the cursor, that's a semi-porous surface, which allows natural vegetation to grow through. The access itself off the Preston Capes Road will be hardbound surface, surface, and all meets with highways approval. Okay, so can we move on to the site photos? So the one on the left is the site entrance as it is now. You can see an existing barn there, and then behind that is the caravan which is on the site, which does not currently have permission. That is really the only view that you'll ever get of it when you're standing in that position by the access. If you move anywhere further up the road or down the road, you won't see it. The other two photos show looking up towards Churchstone, and the one downhill is going down towards Everton. The next set of photos are some. I've walked within the site now, and I'm looking back at that small red brick barn that you can see from the entrance, and behind it, tucked behind it, is the caravan. The applicant has done a bit of domestic gardening to the left of the caravan. The second photo I've basically just swiveled round, and that is the southern boundary main road, which you saw on the site location plan. So you can just see the field is just, it's not really cultivated at the moment. And there's another photo within the site, so I'm turning. The first one, it's looking northwest towards the Preston Capes Road, and that is roughly where the glamping pods will be sited. And then I've just, on the second photo, I've just worked further back into the field, just to give you a sense of the size of it really, and I'm looking back at the site entrance. And then the next slide is the southern boundary, Main Street, which is the one that goes towards Upper Stowe. I'm looking on the first photo, the site is to the left of the vegetation, so you can see it's quite thickly screened. On the second photo, the site is on the right of the vegetation, again that's demonstrating the screening. And on the third photo, I do find a gap in it, and if you do look very carefully, you can just see the barn there. If you squint, you might see it. So my point being that the site is fairly well screened. However, there is a public right-of-way in the field to the east. So here's some photos. The first one from where it starts. The second one I've walked about 100 metres into it, and you can just begin to see the site, the field over the other side of the hedge. These are broad beams, by the way. And then I walked further on, perhaps another 200 yards, or about 300 yards into the public right-of-way, and you can just about see the existing barn. Then you cannot see the caravan at all because it's tucked behind that little cluster of trees. Where the cursor is now showing, that's roughly where the glamping pods will be sited once they're installed. Okay, so that's the photos. I'll just quickly talk about the report now. So the application came forward because it followed enforcement investigation, because there's currently no permission for the caravan on site, or indeed any other uses beyond agricultural. Although the applicant has had a few sort of camping events in the last couple of years. The applicant wants to establish a business that promotes off-grid living and self-sufficiency, and the business will include many things, but key amongst these are workshops and events with camping and glamping opportunities, and the cultivation of lavender herbs and to make health products. The applicant also needs to be on site to manage the business, so they are proposing retention of the temporary mobile home. So there's two elements to the proposal: the change of use element from agriculture to a mixed use, which includes agriculture but other things as well, and the retention of the temporary mobile home. The key issues for this application are the principle of development in this location, the impact on the character and appearance of the rural setting, neighbouring amenity and highway safety, and there are other matters which kind of weigh in its favour, which are renewable energy, land contamination and biodiversity. I'll talk about each of those now. So talking about the principle of development, as I said, there's two elements, the change of use element and the retention of the temporary home element. Policy is, in terms of change of use, policy is supportive of small-scale rural diversification schemes, as long as there are no wider impacts on the setting and environment, etc. Accordingly, West Northants Economic Development Team are supportive of the scheme, stating various potential benefits, including business growth, expansion of the local tourism offer, and potential job opportunities. I'll come to wider impact shortly. In terms of retaining the temporary home, although the general thrust of policy is to limit new housing in the open countryside, there are exceptions, and one of these is for rural worker dwellings which are required to support a rural business. In the case of a new business, a temporary home is acceptable whilst the business establishes itself. However, there are caveats to this, as ever, namely that the home is suitably sized and located, that there is no existing accommodation that could be used, and the photos demonstrate that the caravan is relatively modest, it's largely hidden from public view, and whilst there may or may not be alternative accommodation in the locality, there is no guarantee that this is either affordable or offers security of tenure. In terms of the impact on the rural setting, character and appearance, this is an important thing to consider given the tranquil rural setting, but it's already been noted that the caravan itself has limited visual impact, and the proposed new driveway and parking will be semi-porous, allowing natural vegetation to grow through, which is what you'd expect in a rural setting. However, the glamping pods, yurts, will be tucked against a tree line along the northwest boundary, as it was shown. There they are there, that is the northwest, that's not pointing north, that plan. But there is no indication of the number and size of the pods or yurts, or indeed what they will look like. So a condition will be imposed requesting details before any are imposed, so that allows us to control how many, how big, what they look like, to ensure they are suitable to a rural setting. A condition will also be applied for information to prevent visitors making the site their permanent or semi-permanent home. In terms of neighbourhood amenity and highway safety, these two concerns are linked because concerns were raised about increased traffic on the local roads, which can impact on local residents' amenity and could be a risk to highway safety. However, the scale of the enterprise suggests that this would not be a significant issue, and the local highways authority did not raise it as an issue either. Indeed, they said visibility is good at the site entrance, and all visitors will be parking within the site, not on the local roads. The potential for news nuisance was also flagged up, but given the scale of the enterprise, this is not considered to be either persistent or intense. But if it did become either of these things, it would then be a matter for environmental health to take any action as they deem necessary. On the other matters I mentioned at the beginning, in terms of renewable energy, the applicant already has a small solar panel array and intends to install a mini wind turbine, which would probably require permission at a later date, as and when. Our environmental health colleagues said that given the unknown quality of the land, a site investigation and risk assessment for contamination should be carried out, but as the site is largely being used for grazing, and as there will be no significant excavations, at the end of the day, yurts, pods, they're all semi-permanent structures, this is deemed to be excessive and unnecessary. And in terms of biodiversity, the applicant has already planted some trees around the boundary, and all the cultivation will be organic. So there is potential for biodiversity improvements. So to conclude, the proposal is a suitable use of land in this location and has policy support, and it will have little or no impact on the setting, highway safety or neighbouring amenity. And any areas where there is doubt, for instance the number and size of the glamping pods, can be controlled by conditions. And there may even be benefits in terms of biodiversity in the environment. And my last thing that I really need to say is that please bear in mind that the siting and occupation of the caravan is temporary. And if after 3 years the business is not taken off, there will be no continuing justification to retain it, and it will have to be removed.
Okay, thank you very much, Tim. Thank you. I have two speakers on this item. Councillor David Smith. Want to address this first? When I ask you to speak, if you come to the table, take a seat there. In front of me, there are some traffic lights. Green is you've got 3 minutes. At 2.5 minutes, it will turn to amber. And then when the red light comes on, that's your 3 minutes up, and I'll ask you to stop speaking. When you've finished your speech, just stay seated, and then we'll ask the committee if there's any questions. Okay? So thank you, David.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. So I'm here in support of the Parish Council in their opposing this application. The change of use of the land by reason of its isolated location, which is detached from a range of services, should be considered unsustainable. development and contrary to policy. It's mentioned the view of the caravan from the road. The caravan is easily viewed from the road down to Church Stowe. I drove up there only on Monday. So going through the report, 7.1, the policies detailed in 7.1 states small-scale economic development, including tourism and rural diversification, as long as there is no negative impacts on the existing setting. Well, there will, without question, be a negative impact on the existing setting. And then going to 7.3, in my mind, the application doesn't demonstrate any need for accommodation on the site. There's no livestock there. There's in the business plan it talks about security and things, but I don't believe being present on the site at night will make a difference when you to the people who are glamping, for example. In my mind, the business could easily be run sustainably with the applicant living elsewhere in the locality and travelling on a daily basis, which is something we all, or most of us, do for our work. And certainly the business plan doesn't evidence anything in it. Onto highways. This site was, as you'll see in the report, in 2008 was refused on highways ground, which I find very interesting that we moved through 16 years with the increase in population from 2011 to 2021. In this area, 13.5% increase in population. We all know the roads are busier, and yet this time round the highways report is saying that there will be no effect. And yet that was in the 2008 refusal, they were very clear in that. It's a shame that highways aren't here this evening, so we could actually question that. If you look at our original application, it was to convert the barn, so that may have produced maybe 2 cars and the movements that would be associated with that. We're looking here at 20 parking spaces, access for coaches and things, so I think that this should actually be looked at again. I think in my mind, I think the committee could consider deferring a decision, doing a site visit, and also when it comes back to planning, should you decide to do that, and that's obviously your gift, to invite highways along to actually to justify their position on highways. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Stay there, David. See if anyone's got any questions. Any questions to Councillor Smith? Councillor Joyce.
Councillor Smith, I'm very concerned about the road here. Obviously, looking at this picture, I see the road goes round to a bend, and obviously on the opposite side, it again deviates that way. What's the actual speed limit on that road? Is it 60?
Sorry, that's a 60 mile an hour road,
right.
yes.
Also, obviously, I can't sort of see any lighting either on that road. I don't know if there are any street lights or any lights along that road.
No lighting at all, as I say. I think that the committee would really benefit from a site visit on this one, because you would then be able to see the view from the road from Church Stowe as well.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions? No? Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Smith. I'm next going to call on Linda Carter, representing Stowe Nine Churches Parish Council. So again, just to remind you, you've got 3 minutes to speak. Thank you. So just when you're ready, just introduce yourself and then you can start.
Lovely, thank you. I'm Linda Carter. I'm clerk to the Parish Council of Stowe Nine Churches. Okay. This is, as they said, a retrospective application, as officers have been aware of the applicant's presence on this site for 2 years, and events have been held on there since 2 years ago. The main concerns of the Parish Council relate to the impact that this development outside of the village confines will have on the character, beauty and tranquillity of the setting, and I would disagree with your officer. It is clearly visible in winter when there are no leaves on all those trees. The local plan part 2 supports a development in this type of location where it will contribute towards or improve the local economy. The local economy in Stowe Nine Churches is agricultural. There are no facilities, no shop, no bus service, no school, no nursery. It has no services. So for the events proposed, everything will have to be brought to the site using local roads, as will visitors, in a part of the village where 2 cars can pass with difficulty. And as you can see, that visibility is not good. There are bends in both directions and it's on the top of a hill. The previous application was refused on highways grounds, and this proposal would have a greater impact and place an additional burden on the local area. The parish council is supportive of local business initiatives, as is demonstrated at the old dairy farm, but in the 2 years so far, this site has caused problems with little evidence of viability. There is no demonstrated need for the applicant to be resident on the site, or indeed the residents in the 2 additional caravans which have been there since last November. The parish council would ask that councillors visit the site before determining the application and judge for yourselves the potential impact on the parish. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Just remain seated while I ask if there's any questions. Cecile.
Yes. Can you? This one doesn't work.
Use Daniel's.
Thank you. Thank you. You say that the site has been in activity for 2 years. What have you experienced in those 2 years as a village? Thank you.
There's been an increase in traffic, in noise. When music's playing there, it can be heard because it's on the top of the hill. The sound carries quite a long way. The other inconvenience, I guess, more than anything, is the fact that because we do have that footpath passing the site, there have been times when aggressive dogs have been very much in evidence along the fence line to local people walking the footpath.
Any further questions? No? Okay, thank you very much. Okay, anything you want to come back on there, Tim?
Yes, if I may, the Local Highways Authority did base their response on a speed survey, which met their standards for speed surveys. Average speeds were about 38 miles an hour, and they were satisfied that the speed survey results proved that it was safe access and there's good visibility in both directions.
Okay, thank you. So, any questions to the officers? Councillor Swift.
Because it was refused on highway ground, could I ask our local, our solicitor, would it be useful to go and revisit that and say it could be a refuse on the same ground, having listened to what our officer said, that highway just had a survey, and on the survey, suddenly it is deemed that the site, it is.
Yeah. You need to rely on the up-to-date response. That is what you must be guided by.
Yeah, I'll add to that as well. The application that's referred to from, I think it was 2008, it should be in the planning history, was not for the same thing. It was to convert the little barn into a dwelling. It was not linked to the rural business or anything. It was just a little rural dwelling in the open countryside, which is clearly not acceptable. Not only that, the little barn, yes, there may have been highway grounds for refusing it back then, but other reasons it was refused for was the fact that the little barn is too small to be a dwelling house.
Okay, thank you. Councillor.
Yeah, thanks. Mine goes back to the highways things as well. I mean, I still have concerns that obviously we have to bear in mind what it is now, and that's the legal basis of which we make our decisions. But we don't know what I mean, I find it difficult to believe that it's any better than it was back in 2008, and I'd like to know what the actual highways grounds were for refusing it back in, or part of it, of refusing it back that far away. I know there's other issues there that the officers said that it was a too small a property, and highways issue may not have been the major one to refuse it before, but I can't really see that it's any better now than it would have been in 2008. In fact, it would be worse, and I still have serious concerns about the highways issues on here.
That was a question to you, apparently.
Well, in my opinion, the scale of the enterprise is not huge. I mean, the site, it's not a big site. We're not talking Glastonbury here. We're talking very small camping sites at the end of the day.
Through you, Chairman. I mean, ultimately, you're dealing with the application before you this evening. The application was refused back in 2008. Different set of circumstances, different proposal, and possibly seen against a different set of policy background. It's the usual balancing exercise of, you know, trying to control what goes on in the countryside, but balance that with sort of promoting rural economy, etc. So that's the decision you need to take. As far as highways are concerned, they've been consulted on this as the statutory consultee on highway matters and have not raised any objections. Should also point out that even without this application, it is possible for events to take place in this area under permitted development rights of the temporary use of land, you know, combination of 14, 28 days or whatever. So, and also under the Caravan Licensing Act, you can have sort of sites up to sort of 4 or 5 caravans sort of operating out of these sites. So there are certain fallback positions, but ultimately the application before us this evening has been assessed, has been consulted upon, and we're obviously putting the recommendation to you. But you're entitled to take a different view. Clearly, you need to produce the evidence to counter the advice of the Highway Authority in that respect. Thanks, Chair.
Councillor Hill.
Just one. No, it's worked out. Thank you. Because it's to help a business, and it's a little business. If the business fails, can we give a temporary planning permission to 3 years? And if it fails, it goes back to the original site. Because we have done that in the past, but I don't know if we can do that with the new legislation.
That's exactly what we're saying.
Yes.
Yeah, that's what's being proposed.
Again, through you, Chairman, no, we cannot see into the future. You have an application before you. What we're saying is that in terms of the policies and this balancing exercise of trying to promote rural economy, etc., the policy allows for temporary sort of residential use, etc., on site to allow for a business to become viable. Clearly, if that doesn't come viable at the end of 3 years, then an application could be submitted to seek further. We would have to judge that at that particular time. But at the moment, what we're looking to do is to grant permission for a temporary period to see if that business takes place and becomes viable. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much. Councillor Hill.
Thank you, Chair. My question is around the 3-year period. So essentially, I think you said that after 3 years, the caravan would be potentially removed if it was not viable. Who makes that assessment? Do we make the assessment of whether the business has succeeded, or do they say that? And if so, if it isn't successful, is it an enforcement action that's taken, say, if they don't remove the stuff at that point?
Good question. Like with all things in planning, it's probably a judgment call, but we would expect to see some level of sustainability and viability with forward planning and all the rest of it. I think under the policy they are required to submit accounts in order to prove their case.
Thank you. Okay. Any further questions? Councillor Flavel.
Yes. Well, I'll make comments later. Mrs. Carter raised about the noise and dogs. Now I realise that's a very difficult situation because we're in planning, but I didn't notice anything in the conditions that covered that area. Is that something you can do or not?
I don't think it is.
I had a feeling it wasn't. I've been doing this for so long, I had a feeling it wasn't.
Yeah.
I was hoping that you might come forward with some clever idea.
I mean, well, you know, lots of rural enterprises and dwellings have noisy dogs.
Yeah, well,
Okay.
yeah, that's fine.
Thank you. We'll move on to comments then. Any comments on this application? Councillor Flavel.
I might as well say, well, I have to say, in the conditions, I was very pleased to see.
Could you just pop your microphone on? Thank you.
Sorry, I've completely forgotten about that. Sorry, Jamie. In the clamping structures, I was pleased to see, because I'd written the question here, how big, and you answered that with your when you spoke about it in the beginning, and I was very interested to see that that's going to be determined by visual amenities because it's in a rural setting. And also I was pleased to see that you were mentioning about 30 days in any 90-day cycle. They were 2 points I thought were really quite important. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further comments? No? Okay then. So the officer's recommendation is to approve this application. So do I have a proposer to approve the officer's recommendation? Councillor Flavel. Do I have a seconder?
Yeah.
Councillor Hill. So all those in favour, please put your hands up. Clearly see. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 for, against, and 2 against, and no abstentions. So that is passed. Okay, thank you very much. So item 5C has been withdrawn. So we'll move on to 5D, Oswald Court in Northampton. So we're just going to change officers. Are you doing this or is Jonathan doing it? Okay, and this is Jonathan's going to present this in a moment.
I'm going to use this, it's available online.
Okay, Jonathan, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. This application is for change of use of a domestic dwelling house into accommodation for supported living, use class C2. The existing property is at 4 Halswell Court, Northampton, which is not in the conservation area. It is situated at the end of a very quiet residential cul-de-sac in an established residential suburb of Northampton. The plans before you show the layout of the property existing proposed floor plans. The existing property is a 4-bedroom property, and the proposal is to implement an 8-bedroom property. Paragraph 2.1 to 2.3 of the report sets out a description of the type of supported living that's being proposed. The plans in front of you show the elevations of some minor tweaks to the fenestration. The double garage has been converted into habitable accommodation with some windows at ground floor. Moving on to the photographs, please. That's the front of the property with the existing driveway and front garden. The existing driveway can accommodate probably roughly 3-4 cars maximum. That's a picture of the street scene. The street is unrestricted parking. All the properties on the area have off-street car parking and can accommodate 2-3 cars in front. Highways have been consulted on the application, have raised no objection. Environmental Health have also been consulted on the application, have raised no objection. And also the police have been consulted and raised an objection. The application has been recommended for approval subject to the conditions in the report. I just draw attention to the end of the report. Standard time condition to be commenced within 3 years. Approved plans to be implemented in accordance. The use shall be supported living accommodation only under Class C2 of the use class order. Number of occupants, excluding carers and any managers, shall not exceed 6. That's to define the plan permission and the interest of residential amenity. Details of bin stores to be agreed. And the front driveway shall be used only for the purpose of car parking. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Jonathan. Okay, we have 4 public speakers on this. So I'll call on Councillor Hallam first, please. Can we address the committee, Mike?
Good evening, Chair. I'm Councillor Mike Hallam. I'm the one of the 3 councillors for the ward which this falls into.
Okay, thank you. You've got 3 minutes starting from now.
Thank you. So there are 3 really important points to cover here. Because this application from my residents doesn't currently work. And I stress the word currently because they're not against the change of use to this property per se, and would actually welcome the opportunity to talk to the applicant about their plans for the property and obviously their wider business plan. I always stress to residents or people thinking about planning that consultation is really important in the planning process. But I think with a cul-de-sac like this, it's even more important. You know, it would have been really easy for an applicant to access this close-knit community. 7 letters to deliver, or 7 knocks on 7 neighbours' doors, but nothing. This is a community willing and keen to help shape this scheme, if only the applicant had reached out. There are 2 principal planning objections here, and they're directly related. So the first one is size. The Arbours is a large estate split over the two sides of the road, and all properties on the Arbours estate are really a majority of 3 or 4 bedroom homes. So it's quite a shock to see a development for 8 bedrooms proposed in one of the small cul-de-sacs that makes up the Arbours. This is also a property in the corner, so therefore people have to access that. And I'm quite pleased that that picture's up on the screen, so I flick it back, whoever flicked it off, because the real principal concern around this is on parking. Now, I was always taught with parking measures, if you double park cars, that doesn't count as a parking space, because obviously the first car is backed off with a car behind and can't get out. Well, you can see on here, you can probably get 4 parking spaces in, but that's it. Well, according to our own local plan, which the report fails to mention this, the recommended parking guidelines are way off here. So I make it, and this is my calculations, based on those recommended guidelines, we need 3 parking spaces for the residents and 1 for each full-time equivalent member of staff. Well, it's difficult to determine from the report how many of those members of staff are full-time, but there's a lot of them because they're working on a 24-hour basis. So I would suggest that's at least 2 full-time equivalent members of staff, which means 5 parking spaces. Actually, if we could have the information, we'd be able to work out that it might even be 6 parking spaces. And I'm not sure, according to the rules of not double parking, how you fit 6 cars into the front of that property without double parking them. So this is a really important point, and I do think that information is lacking, and it's very difficult to work out the calculation without it. What I'd like to see in these reports in the future is that calculation worked out to show residents exactly what that parking methodology is and where those spaces will be. So as it stands at the moment, myself and the residents I represent are asking for this to be rejected on the basis of overdevelopment of the site, an 8-bedroom property on a estate of 3 or 4, and the lack of parking provision. And I'd really welcome in the clarifications the officers clarifying what that parking calculation is. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mike. You just remain seated. See if the committee's got any questions. Any questions for Councillor Hallam? Councillor Joyce.
Hi, Councillor Hallam. You say the local night of the cul-de-sac, nobody's been consulted about this? Just to clarify.
Yeah, that's right, yeah. So there's 8 properties in the cul-de-sac in total. So obviously the applicant is 1 property and then there's 7 neighbouring properties.
Thank you. Any further questions for Councillor Hallam? Okay, thanks, Mike. Okay, moving on to the next speaker. It's got William Furness. I'd like to come and address the committee, Mr. Furness. And just say you've got 3 minutes to just watch those traffic lights below. And if I remember, I'll give you a half-minute warning. But I can't see myself, so. Okay, over to you.
Good evening. My name's William Furness. I live at 5 Holswell Court. In terms of the objections, I'll come on to those later on, but I just wanted to make some comments on the planning process in relation to this application. The first one was that we do not believe that a planning notice was put in the cul-de-sac. If it was removed. The second one was that not all residents of Holswell Court received notification of the planning application, with at least 1 resident not receiving it. I believe that the applicant has been disingenuous in his application, in that he has stated that he is living at the property. This is untrue, the property having been vacant since early December 2023, when the previous owner moved out. The process for objecting did not initially allow the 21 days statutory consultation period, however this was corrected. Despite requesting information in relation to the proposed care provider and their credentials, the local authority has not confirmed who the provider is in order to allow myself and the residents to undertake some due diligence. We are not opposed to the development that provides high quality living accommodation with people with different abilities. However, I do believe the current plans would not satisfy the needs and requirements of prospective residents. I do not believe that the Highways Authority have properly considered the additional traffic within Holswell Court that this development will create and the associated parking. The report to this committee states that there are no parking restrictions. However, the whole of Holswell Court is drop curbed and therefore parking on it would be illegal. I believe the number of proposed residents constitutes an overdevelopment of what is a quiet residential cul-de-sac. Whilst it's not the decision of the Planning Committee to approve the interior design of the development, I know that the plans would currently exclude some people with physical disabilities, as there are no lifts, ramps, and the doors are not wide enough to accommodate wheelchair access. The proposed development would have additional windows at ground level which would directly overlook mine and my wife's ground bedroom. I regard this as a significant loss of privacy that will be created if the planning application is granted in accordance with the submitted plan. Again, if the plan was altered, then that would be a different thing. Due to the increased number of proposed residents at 4 Holswell Court, there would undoubtedly be a significant increase in the number of vehicles being operated adjacent to my premises, potentially on social hours with an increase in noise which would be detrimental. I would like to reiterate that if the developer had discussed the proposals... Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Could we see on the plan when you live, because you say that your wife's bedroom, and I know it's a bedroom, will be overlooked quite significantly.
That is correct.
So could we have an idea where exactly you are and when the bedroom and the distance? That is maybe a question later.
So if you can see where the red garages are, the proposal is to turn that into an office with windows in it. If you then look where the red car is to the right of it, not that one, the maroon car. Yes. Okay. So it's directly, our bedroom is directly opposite that garage area.
Any further questions for Mr. Furness? Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Furness.
Thank you.
I'll call on Neil Russell next, please. Just remind you, Mr. Russell, 3 minutes.
No problem.
Okay, thank you very much.
Good evening, members of the committee. I am the owner of number 3 Holswell Court. I wish to raise concern about the planning application for 4 Holswell Court. I would like you to take into consideration the following points. At no point the new owners made themselves known to any of the residents, nor have they offered any consultation meetings. We do not know if they have a sustainable business model, which the police have requested evidence of, but we have not been made privy to. Any time when additional information has been requested, the answer has been vague and has not been directly answered. The planning application has been inaccurate, where the applicant has advised the council that the dwelling is being lived in, whereas the property has been empty since December 2023, when Mr Patel, the previous owner, moved. I appreciate there is a need and I'm not opposed to social housing. However, there are still many unknowns surrounding this application from the broad classification of C2 supported living. The planning application changes the dynamics in the well-established residential community of the court, with my family having been resident for over 25 years. Maximising a 4-bedroom house to 8 bedrooms, providing each with very small bathrooms and insufficient living breakout space, leaves the property inadequate for the number of residents and staffs. There is no clear indication of how the accommodation will be split between the staffs and residents. The staff level has been based on 8 residents at the time I took this, so where is the staff accommodation? This was another concern of the police. This overdevelopment of the property in a cul-de-sac location does raise social disturbance concerns as well. With residents, day staff, night staff, a living manager, surely as a planning consideration we have to assume worst case scenario that everyone is a car owner. There is not enough parking provision. Even without residents' cars, there's still not enough provision for staff, as we have to take into consideration staff crossover at shifts. Holswell Court has a continuous drop curb, and any vehicles parked in the court or in the turning circle at the bottom of the court will impede the additional traffic, such as waste, which will include the addition of commercial, should planning be approved, more importantly, the emergency vehicles as well. I would also point out the access to the rear would not allow for commercial bins or the standard domestic bin. Therefore, the waste bins would need to be stored out front, which would again potentially take up parking space. Just because the court is not a main highway, does this make the risks of increased traffic flow any less important? The vagueness of the application as to use, the parking provision, the residents who will be there, who the applicant is, sustainability of their business, and the sheer lack of communication from the applicant leads you to wonder the motive and sincerity of the application and its purpose. I thank you for your time.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Russell. Just remain seated or see if there's any questions. Any questions at all? No? Thank you very much, then, Mr. Russell. Thank you. Okay, I'm going to call on Har Samurai next, who is going to speak for it. So again, you've got 3 minutes. Just keep an eye on the traffic lights on the floor there.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Good evening and thank you for the opportunity to speak. I'm Har Samurai, the architectural designer of this proposal, acting and speaking on behalf of the applicant. There are some important high-level summaries I'd like to cover to hopefully assist with your discussion this evening. First, we should cover the principle of development, and the question is whether the proposed change of use into supported living accommodation is appropriate in this location. The site is not protected under special restricted planning designations within the local plan. The site occupies a unique location at the end of a residential cul-de-sac with a driveway that accommodates up to 4 cars with no on-street parking restrictions. The proposal is designed for and will cater specifically for those with learning difficulties and vulnerable adults. Property will be converted from a 4-bed dwelling into an 8-bed small-scale care facility. There is a growing demand for this small-scale specialised care facility within the town and will have significant health, social and education benefits for those that are fortunate enough to secure a place here. On this basis alone, the principle of development is deemed acceptable, and the officer report confirms that there are no policy reasons to arrive at a different conclusion. Second, we move on to the local impact of this proposal. As noted in the officer report, this is an established residential area and the proposal represents a form of residential accommodation. In this regard, the proposal is compatible with the established surroundings. The officer's report confirms that the number of occupants can be controlled via a planning condition. The applicant understands and accepts the need for this condition. Environmental health has not raised any concerns. The proposal would blend well into the character and composition of the area. In addition, Highways has not objected. The applicant has worked proactively with the planning authority to clarify queries and concerns that have been raised during the course of the planning consultation process. Even now, the applicant has confirmed that it is prepared to review the detail of the project further with the planning officer if this would assist the final outcome. Taking all of this into account, including all of the evidence in the officer's detailed report, it is evident that on balance the proposal satisfies all relevant planning policy and that there is no sustainable reason for refusal. The proposal is deemed acceptable in terms of its principle and its social and community benefits and all detailed aspects, including its siting, layout, scale and impact on local amenity. We hope that you will support this proposal. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Just remain there while see if there's any questions. Councillor Hill first.
Thank you, Chair. My question's around consulting the residents. I've had a lot of people speak tonight and say that they weren't consulted in, obviously, apart from the statutory way that the council would have. Is there any reason why the applicant decided not to speak with residents, given it's such a small knit community? It would have been quite easy to do so.
Well, I can only really speak from my sort of presumptions, but the application, the design and application submission process was fairly quick. I don't know if there was much time. It was around Christmas time, but the process of the planning application in and of itself does provide that service.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Flavel.
Thank you very much. Yes, I have 1 or 2 questions for you. We have it here that you are the applicant and the agent. That is correct.
I'm the agent. I'm not the applicant.
So the applicant, it has your name the same, but you are not the applicant. You're just the agent.
I'm just the agent, yes.
Right. Well, I'm not quite sure you're going to be answer this, but as the agent for the applicant, you should be able to. The person who is making this application, is it actually a private company?
It is, yes, yeah. It's a, again, I don't know the, I'm not intimate with the formation of the company, but yes, it is private. And my understanding is that other care providers, even sometimes the NHS, would then act as tenant to this property?
Yes, that isn't quite what I asked. So this applicant, he is a business, or she is a business. I personally would like to know the experience they have of running something like this, and I don't know whether you can tell me.
Councillor Favour, we need to stick to the planning application, what we know in black and white.
I totally understand that. It's just that in my mind, this gentleman is here to answer questions, and I have it here that he is also the applicant. Obviously, that's not quite right. And I was hoping to have some questions, but I can ask that.
We need to keep the planning reasons.
Right, okay. Well, that might have come as a reason if I'd been allowed to ask, but never mind. I just wanted to know if it is a private company, and that...
Which the answer was yes.
Yes, thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you.
Councillor Irving-Swift.
Yes, because they are small houses, you are transforming a 4-bedroom to an 8-bedroom. So maybe if the size doesn't change, my issue is, are those in compliance? Because if they are vulnerable people, the bedroom were not palatial to start with, so you cut a bit more of space and so on. Do you think the design is big enough to accommodate 8 vulnerable people? Thank you.
Well, the answer is yes. The design guide I received from the client was conformed to the size of each bedroom is actually larger than what would be a double bedroom in the national space standards when it comes to supplying flats and dwellings in a normal flatted development. So they're actually bigger than what is required on that regard. There is enough space because the double garages have both been converted, and there's still a kitchen facility there. So there are ample bathrooms as well. So it is in my opinion that it is big enough to support this. The rooms themselves, the bedrooms themselves, will be big enough for some leisure too.
Okay, thank you very much. Angel, come back on.
Again, Chairman, to answer Councillor Swift's question, my understanding of these setups is that they are regulated as well under Ofsted, etc., who will be looking at the internal arrangements, whether or not they meet their standards before they grant the licence. As I understand it, they won't do that until it's been through the planning process. That's my understanding, given my experience with previous applications.
Any further questions? Okay,
Can I add one more thing, just to want to address
sorry,
parking?
You can't, because you've had your 3 minutes.
Okay.
You've answered questions, I'm afraid I have to say no. Okay, thank you. Jonathan, if you want to come back up.
Yeah, just come back on a few points raised by Councillor Hallam and Mr Furness as well. In terms of overdevelopment, we consider the property is quite substantial in size. This has been raised already, and can accommodate 8 bedrooms quite easily. The vast majority of bedrooms do have en suites, as we've alluded to before. In terms of parking, it is quite interesting, and your point is noted. It was a very good point, actually. Highways obviously have not objected to the application. The front garden, as a dwelling house, the front garden could be hard paved under permitted development, and potentially could create an additional 1-2 spaces without needing planning permission as it currently stands. As I say, so Highways did not object. If refused on Highways grounds, then we'd be able to have a sticky wicket, because obviously they're the experienced Highway Parking Authority. In terms of the consultation process, there was no legal requirement to erect a site notice at the property. Under the planning legislation, it's an either-or approach. You can either, for most development, you can erect a site notice or do neighbour letters. In this case, we did 7 neighbour letters, and there was 17 letters of objection and response. So obviously word got around, and there's been quite substantial response to the consultation exercise that was undertaken. In terms of the privacy issue over the windows at ground floor level, they are at ground floor level, and the windows could be installed under permitted development. I get the point in terms of the neighbours' concern over the separation between window space and them, but obviously they are at single-storey level and there is a reasonable separation distance. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any questions to Jonathan? Councillor Hill.
I think a few of the residents and maybe Councillor Hannah raised about who the actual vendors were, and they've been trying to find it out via the council. Now, I appreciate that isn't a material planning concern, but or issue, but is that something that we as a council are aware of and happy with?
I can't really confirm that.
Any further questions to Jonathan? Any comments then? Peter.
I've got a question, if I may.
Yes.
Thank you. Point 7.2 says the property is located in a quiet residential street and would generate comings and goings throughout the day in terms of staff, residents and visitors arriving and leaving by car, residents parking and general activity associated with the use of such a nature being a 24-hour operation. Doesn't that therefore impede on the local amenity of the residents of that close?
Thank you very much for your comment, Councillor. Well noted. I think in this case the property is detached property. It doesn't share party walls with adjacent properties. It is acknowledged in the report quite correctly that there will be some impact in terms of residential living conditions. However, Environmental Health have not objected to noise that would justify a refusal in this case.
Okay, thank you. Any comments? No? Okay, so the officer's recommendation... Sorry, I've told you once before, you've had your 3 minutes, you've answered questions, I need to move on. So the officer's recommendation is for approval. Do we have a proposer to the officer's recommendation? No. Okay. If I was to propose it, do I have a seconder? Would that help? Clearly not. So do I have an alternative proposal? And if so, the reasons why, the planning reasons why you're proposing it. I think Peter came up with one, didn't you, Peter, on amenities?
I thought you might tempt me. I would like to propose that we go against officers' advice on the basis of affecting the amenity of the local residents with the traffic comings and goings, and I believe, in my opinion, it's an overdevelopment of the house on the site when compared to the other houses on that site. It's an overdevelopment of the area. Okay. In my opinion.
Thank you. Councillor Flavel. Right. Anything you want to add to the proposal?
Sorry?
Anything you want to add to the list of reasons?
I'm very sorry, I didn't hear that.
Okay, you want to second Peter's
yes,
proposal?
Right.
Yes. Councillor Smith.
Just one thing. Will the first reason about the traffic and the amenity, will that be enough? Because if we have two reasons, if it goes in appeal, will one reason be better for the officer to defend? Thank you.
One strong reason would be better than lots of weak ones, yes.
Chair, can I suggest there are more options than accepting the recommendation or doing an about turn and recommending refusal. Just looking at the applicant's statement that's been submitted on the application form, the planning statement, it says to minimise disruption to neighbourhood, parking for staff and residents will be limited to the property's designated parking spaces. We are committed to ensuring that any parking associated with the facility is managed responsibly to mitigate any potential impact on the surrounding area. I wonder whether or not the committee might want to consider a condition which is around a transport traffic management plan or a car parking management plan, which then can be regulated through conditions rather than a refusal. Because as Mr. Moore pointed out, a refusal on highway grounds would be a vulnerable decision for an appeal. So perhaps an alternative is to add that condition where we look at a car park management plan so that the applicant's statement is brought to life and we can regulate how the operation is managed on site.
I appreciate what you're saying, but I don't think that's going to be an option, because I think, can we go back to, have we got a plan of the actual street? We've got a plan of the street, so I think it's... It's at the end, isn't it? So the traffic's going to be moving down.
Chair, how would that be enforced as well, like going forward?
What I'm suggesting, Chair, is you have such things as travel plans. Businesses sometimes have to submit travel plans as part of planning applications, and what it does is it's a way of managing the patterns of movement in and out of the site. So if you expanded the idea of a travel plan to include a car park management plan, what you're asking the applicant to do is bring to life their commitment, which is in their planning application, to say we will manage the car parking responsibly. Whereas what you can do through a car park travel management plan is you're asking them to flesh that out and explain how they're going to do that. What are the movements? What are the shift patterns? How many staff are going to be in there at any one moment? How are they going to get to the accommodation? And through that travel management plan, the council could perhaps regulate the sorts of concerns that you're worried about. And if there is a breach of the travel plan, we've got the powers of enforcement against that breach. That might be an alternative way forward rather than a refusal on highway grounds, which I think you'd be vulnerable on appeal.
Peter, what's your proposal?
Yes, I wonder, Chair, could we possibly ask Councillor Macken to say again what he said? Could you just sort of give again your points? I think it was raised on just 7.2, but I wondered whether there was...
Yes, there were two reasons. One of them was 7.2, and it seems to be the opinion of the committee that that is the better reason to stick with in terms of any appeal. If I was living in one of the houses down that close and the amount of traffic that was travelling up and down it was increased considerably as a result of this application, and it therefore had an effect on my amenity and how I live, and my children out in front of the house playing with the ball, and that's what I'm thinking. It's affecting the lives of the people in the street. It is such, potentially, it is such a large increase in traffic movement that would affect my life living in that street. Now, it's been suggested by Mr. Ellis, a traffic management plan. If there was a way of doing that to make all of the residents no longer be concerned, so it would probably require consultation of the residents, then I would be happy to remove that objection or that reason.
Could we defer the planning application until because in view of our concern that the applicant has time to produce, so the application is not accepted with, but it will come back in front of committee if we are satisfied with the traffic plan.
I'm not sure anything will actually change.
Yeah.
It won't.
Yeah. I try to...
It won't.
Again, from what I'm hearing, there are quite broad concerns here. I agree with Simon. I don't think highway safety, given the advice of the Highway Authority that's been before you, would be a sustainable reason for refusal. Likewise, I think that the space standards or overdevelopment argument is one that would be sustainable at appeal. Impact on amenity by comings and goings is perhaps a much more, shall we say, subjective, general, sort of, because we don't live in the cul-de-sac, it's the residents who live in the cul-de-sac, so we're not experiencing what they experience or what they perceive to be experiencing. As an officer, I'm not suggesting I agree necessarily with the residents, but I can understand their concerns. So the amenity issue is perhaps one that you may see some ability to make a case, but no, it's a very subjective judgment because it's based on the comings and goings. Playing devil's advocate, I would say, well, that's no different to if that house were occupied by a large family with the comings and goings. So you have to consider that it's quite a large dwelling at the end of a cul-de-sac, which appears to be quite a broad cul-de-sac. The Highway Authority are not opposing this application on highway safety grounds. But if members feel that there's an amenity issue that they wish to pursue, that's something that you can consider. I'm not suggesting that it's necessarily a sustainable reason, given the potential fallback situations. But it appears to me what Councillor Matton is saying in his first reason is one about amenity, with the perceived increase in comings and goings, as opposed to highway safety. But that's just my sort of interpretation, as it were, of members' views. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you. So, Peter, is your proposal still on the table?
It is, Chair, unless we can defer the application so that the agent can consider consultation with the residents over traffic management. But if that's not the case and we don't have the ability to do that, then yes, my proposal is still on the table that we go against on the basis of amenity of the residents in the street.
Councillor Flagg, your second.
I'm in agreement with Councillor Matton, and I second his proposal if he's making it.
So we have a proposal that you've got the recommended. You've got the proposal there from Councillor Matton to refuse the application on the impact of the amenity. Seconded by Councillor Fravel. All those in favour? Hold on.
Can I just clarify, Chairman, it's with respect to the comings and goings of staff, visitors, etc. And that excludes the reference to space standards and overdevelopment.
Yeah. All those in favour? That's unanimous. That's 7. So that application is refused. So, we just went as we think through it carefully. Mr. Gandy, yes, your application will be passed. Okay, just we haven't done that. Okay, so we'll move on to item 5E, which is the Godwin Manor. Yes, we're going to take these two together. So we'll take 5E and 5F together, but we'll need to vote on them separately. Okay. And this is
Eamon is a late draft. Unfortunately, the case officer couldn't attend this evening. Again, so I'll do my best to... This is the location plan. As for those who know Dogford, secured permission for a wedding venue, which basically is based on the existing buildings around the existing manor house. The manor house retained its residential use. And effectively, this is a planning application to convert that to basically a C1 use in connection with the existing wedding venue. The building is a listed building, so there is an associated application for various internal works, which after some fairly lengthy negotiations with the Conservation Officer, certain elements have been omitted from the current application such that officers are minded to recommend both the planning application and the listed building consent to members this evening. That is not to say that there are still, as the Conservation Officer's comments in the listed building report point out, there are still some fairly major outstanding matters, but they will be dealt with under separate applications in due course. But for the purpose of this evening's meeting, the planning application is recommended for approval, and the listed building consent is also recommended for those elements identified as acceptable by the Conservation Officer. With that, members, there's nothing else to add to the report. I mean, I'll literally go through the drawings in terms of it. It's quite a substantial building, and the idea is to convert to ensuite bedrooms, etc. Much of that work has been undertaken, and as the Conservation Officer's report indicates there are matters that are still up for discussion. This is one of the outbuildings, again, has been converted to ensuite accommodation, or will be converted to ensuite accommodation, without significantly impacting on the external appearance or indeed the internal significance of the currently listed building. Actually, there's a before and after photograph. Look, it's obviously been done now. So very nice. In the space of a couple of photographs, we've moved from how it looked to how it looks now. So in broad general planning terms, there is, as we indicated earlier, support for the rural economy, diversification, the reuse of buildings for commercial purposes, subject to them satisfying the various criteria set out in those policies. And with respect to listed buildings, in terms of promoting and enhancing the significance and protecting the significance of heritage assets. So in this case, we feel that that balance has been struck with regard to the submitted application, but not necessarily with regard to the details that have been omitted from the current application, which will be the subject of further discussions between the Conservation Officer and the applicants in due course. Thanks, Chairman.
Okay, thank you very much. Now, because I'm taking items 5E and 5F together, I'm going to be very generous and give the speakers 6 minutes. They can speak on both items at the same time. So, Councillor Smith, do you want to speak on this item?
I do. I'll be just a moment. I won't need 6 minutes. I probably won't need 60 seconds. So, I'm absolutely in support of this. The parish council is in support of it as well. Very familiar with the site, as you would expect me to be, living so close. So yeah, I think it's a wonderful venue. This can just goes further to contribute to something which is a real asset in the area. That's all I have to say. Any questions? Thank you.
Thank you very much. So we'll put on Brian Russell next. Again, you've got 6 minutes.
Okay. Well, my name is Brian Russell. I'm a director of Rochacoy Partnership, Chartered Architects, Planners, Surveyors. And today I'm here to represent the application for unique venues and available for any questions in these 6 minutes. It's well presented. The planning officers, conservation officers have covered everything within that report, and I have no intention of repeating all that and taking up any more of your valuable time. The few points I would raise, though, is that this is bringing a mainly dormant building back into use. It's been 2 years now, but it's sat pretty much empty. The proposal provides capacity for 24 to 26 guests to enjoy this fabulous listed building, this farmhouse, and actually to let it be used. Listed buildings should be used. It should be seen by us, all of us, not just by one family. That includes disabled people. And these facilities, that building on the picture in front of you, that is used by disabled people, less able people. So there's a unit downstairs. There's another building as well which is used by less able people. They're able, by this facility, when they attend weddings, they're able to be able to step out and actually take a break. Before, they can't do that. They just got to get in the car and go. When they're too tired, they've got to go. Now they can stay. The other benefit of this proposal is a reduction on traffic, because they can stay over. And at the moment there's a double hit on traffic, because there's taxis taking them away to local hotels and whatever, and then the next morning they're getting taxis back. Now these 24, 26 guests are able to stay over, so that helps. The addition of these few extra bedrooms and these things provides a small increase to the local economy, because these guests need servicing. It provides a revenue stream, because this building does need a fair bit of maintenance and upkeep. What also has been done here is the client has invested heavily into environmental measures, no expense really. They've put in the very latest technology of waste treatment for foul waste. All that is in place. Dodford Manor is a very successful business. It's award-winning, but it is a local business. It does need support. It directly employs 57 people. it indirectly employs double that number. That is including local florists, a plethora of musicians, performers, local hairdressers, barbers, makeup artists, coach and taxi companies, business to local trades, etc. The application supports an existing rural business and is accepted in policy terms as demonstrated by the planning officer and conservation officer recommended for approval. So in summary, there is no objection from Highways, the planning officer supports it, and so I encourage you to please support it as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let's see if there's any questions. No questions. So that's great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Do you want to come back on with anything there, Eamon? Any comments? Do you want to come back on?
I just wanted to refer members also to the addendum and the comments of the Conservation Officer, just in addition to the report.
Okay, any questions to Eamon? Any comments? Peter?
Yes, a great application, and I'd like to propose that we go along with officers' advice.
I'm happy to It's seconded by Councillor Irving Swift. All those in favour? I should have said we've got nobody speaking against. So 7, that's... I need to do that again. Sorry, I need to do it twice. Yes, so that was for 5E.
Yeah.
So for 5F then, Peter and...
Same again.
Peter and Councillor Irving Swift, always in favour? Okay, so that's 5E has been approved.
Thank you.
5F has been approved. So that takes us to there. 5G has been withdrawn, so I'll go back to item 5A. Okay. And this is Station Court, Station Road, House, and is the Eamon again to present this?
It is I, Chairman.
So
It's your whole part of the work.
just going. So this is just allow those people to leave, and then so we only have one speaker on this for it. Okay, right, Eamon, over to you.
Again, thanks, Chairman. As you'll see from the description, quite a lengthy description, the proposal is a full application for demolition of existing sheltered housing accommodation that currently provides roughly 23 units, and replace that with 27 affordable dwellings, with a mixture of apartments, 9 apartments, and then semi-detached properties, basically arranged around the site. The site itself is located within the confines of the village of Woodford Halts. Woodford Halts is defined as a primary service village, so it's sort of top of the hierarchy in terms of your rural villages, having a range of amenities and services and employment facilities available to make it a sustainable location. As I say, the proposal is effectively to demolish the existing building on site and replace it with a rather modest residential development comprising, as I say, semi-detached properties providing 2 and 3 bedroomed units of accommodation, all affordable accommodation, and a unit providing 9 one-bed units. In terms of the report itself, there are a number of issues, but as I say, I'll go through. It goes through those in detail. But in terms of the principle, we are satisfied that the proposal effectively results in the redevelopment of a brownfield site in a sustainable location, and in that sense the principle of the development is acceptable and it is supported by policy. In terms of the details of the application, it's dealing with the issues of highway safety, residential amenity, ecology, landscaping and surface water drainage. And again, to that extent the report goes through those issues. The housing type and mix meet relevant policies on promoting that mixed types of development in terms of satisfying identified need, etc. And in terms of the design and appearance, it is judged to be in keeping with its surroundings without detriment to the residential amenity of neighbouring properties. To the south of the site are single-storey units, and the nearest would be, I think it's plot 17 and 21, who come very close to existing single-storey units, but their siting, their orientation and elevations presented result in an acceptable level of impact while securing an acceptable level of amenity for each of the detached units. In terms of character and impact on the character surrounding areas, as I said, the proposal does result in the loss of quite a number of trees, but in terms of peripheral planting, etc., around the site, these are to be retained, and a new landscaping scheme will provide additional planting across the periphery to deliver a sort of an acceptable form of development without an adverse impact on those existing properties. Turning to the natural environment, again, the ecology officers of impact have assessed the proposal, and whilst there's a minimal loss of biodiversity opportunities, are satisfied that conditions can be imposed to secure adequate enhancements against the relevant policies on biodiversity and landscaping. The main issue that has been raised previously is with regard to highway matters. The site is served by, the existing site is served by a private access, which this is shared with, this is the private access. That's Station Road, which is the adopted highway. And there's an access that shares the old Show People in Timberline industrial development further down here. So the Highway Authority have assessed this proposal and have judged it to be acceptable in terms of its layout, in terms of its parking, and in terms of its impact on the public adopted highway network. However, they have suggested the requirement for junction improvements and footpath improvements around here, which will be secured by a combination of conditions, but also Section 106 requirements. In addition, the Highway Authority have asked for contributions towards the local public bus service, which has seen challenging times recently, in an effort to sustain that service for the benefit not only of the site itself, but for the wider community. In terms of the 106, you'll see in the addendum that the education contributions in terms of early years, at the time of writing the report, wasn't fully defined or clarified with our colleagues in the infrastructure section of the council. To date, that still hasn't been clarified. What we are saying is that, given the lack of definitive evidence to require those contributions, that we are not looking to or recommending those as part of the 106 agreement. The other contributions have been justified and are as set out in the report, Chairman. So, on balance, the proposal results in a sustainable form development in a sustainable location, which actually brings about benefits in terms of the reuse of the site and delivering affordable housing across the site to the benefit of the wider community. Thanks, Chairman.
Okay, thank you. I wouldn't speak on this, Mr. Gandy, but take the
Thank you for accommodating my culture.
That's fine, don't worry. You've got 3 minutes. There's some traffic lights on the floor. Green is you've got 2.5 minutes. Amber is 30 seconds. If you're ready to stop, then we'll see if anyone's got any questions for you.
Okay,
so
thank you.
Over to you.
Good evening, members. The need for affordable housing across the country is well documented and requires urgent action. The application consists of the demolition of an outdated, redundant and now vacant sheltered housing complex and the redevelopment of the site to provide 27 high-quality dwellings, being 100% affordable, making an important contribution to the Council's affordable housing supply. The Council's latest Housing and Economic Needs Assessment update demonstrates a district-wide requirement of 5,818 affordable dwellings, or 323 per annum by 2041. We welcome the Planning Department recommending approval for the application, which is fully compliant with planning policy. No statutory consultees object to the application, with conditions applied where necessary, which the applicant is willing to accept. The Council's Strategic Housing Department is strongly supportive of the scheme. The site is previously developed land, is a sustainable location within walking distance of a wide range of shops and services, and would offer a welcome boost to the local economy. The MPPF sets out that substantial weight should be given to developing brownfield land, particularly when to meet an identified need, such as affordable housing. We note some local residents and Councillor Frost have expressed concerns relating to the application. However, all the issues raised have been addressed to the satisfaction of the relevant council officers with whom the applicant has worked collaboratively throughout the application. As stated by the Local Highways Authority, the highways network would not be adversely affected due to only a small increase in trips generated compared to the previous use, along with the agreed improvements such as the creation of pedestrian footpaths and funding to secure local transport links and road markings. Car parking is provided on site in full accordance with adopted standards. The locality comprises a primary service village in the local plan, where residential development within the settlement is supported subject to meeting the policy criteria. The proposed layout and design make efficient use of the site, and the scale, massing and materials proposed are appropriate to the area and as such will not have any impact upon the nearby conservation area or listed buildings. The officer report states, and we fully agree, the development would not adversely affect the residential amenity of neighbours or future occupants.
Carry on.
Occupiers of the proposed development, providing a development that respects and enhances the local character. The natural environment of the site and immediate area will not be adversely affected by the development, with off-site habitat creation and landscaping resulting in ecological betterment. The proposal is fully policy compliant and has demonstrated acceptability to the council officers' satisfaction. In accordance with paragraph 11C of the MPPF, which sets out that development proposals that accord with an up-to-date development plan should be approved without delay, the application has addressed all material planning considerations, and therefore we respectfully request the councillors support the officer recommendation and approve the application.
Okay, thank you very much. Any questions, Mr. Gandy? If there's not, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Anything you want to come back on Amon?
No, Chairman, no.
No? Any questions to Amon? Any comments? Well, Councillor Swift?
Well, I think we should go with officer advice because we do need this kind of things, and the scheme seems to fit. Yes, it's a proposal.
Seconded by Councillor Hill.
Yeah, just to say that I think this is a good example of where an applicant works with the residents and councillors to actually come up with a good solution.
It doesn't look bad in mind, does it? But it's improved.
Absolutely.
Yeah. All those in favour? And that's unanimous at 7. Thank you very much. That's our last item, so I'll close the meeting. But before I do that, I'd just like to say, Councillor Hill, I believe you're leaving. There you go. Well, thank you, the whole committee, thank you for your help over the last 12 months, and I hope to see you all next time.
Thank you.
No, it's fine. It's, thank you anyway. It's a classic situation.